Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Building Healthy, Active Communities Through Safe Routes to School Programs, hosted by the Champion Provider Fellowship. My name is Wagata Semre. I'm a physician at UCSF and director of the Champion Provider Fellowship Program. Before we get started, we'd like to make sure that everyone can hear us. So if you could please be sure to check your audio. If you can hear us, write yes in the chat or give us a thumbs up. If you're having any audio difficulties, please bring that to our attention and we'll try to help with that. I'd like to start off with our UCSF land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land that UCSF sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ramaytush Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. And I'll let Nancy go over a few program updates.
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Nancy. Once again, I'm the project manager for the Champion Provider Fellowship. Some housekeeping items. So we will keep everyone muted through the course of the presentation. If you have any questions or general comments during the presentation, please use the chat box and message me. I will be monitoring it throughout this presentation. This webinar is recorded and will be posted on the website by next week. And for best viewing purposes, we recommend you use your computer audio and maximizing your Zoom screen. And if at any point you're having any technical difficulties, you can also message me. And also, I would like to announce some upcoming events. For our fellows, our next quarterly WIP call is November 9th. There's a link to register here, and you can also visit the link championprovider.ucsf.edu/events to find all of the registration links. We also have for the LHDs our local health department check-in next month as well, November 16th. And we also have a persuasive narrative series for our fellows. We are hoping to release more information. It will be in either March or April of 2024. So look out for communications regarding that workshop. And at this time, I will pass it back over to Wagata to introduce our moderator.
Thanks, Nancy. Dr. Lena Al-Sarraf will be introducing today's speaker and moderating the discussion. Dr. Al-Sarraf is a Champion Provider Fellow alum, mentor, and family medicine physician at the Asian Pacific Healthcare Venture.
Thank you, Agata. I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter, Corey Johnson. Corey Johnson serves as a Program and Engagement Manager at the Safe Routes Partnership. In this role, she provides program technical assistance, leads training, develops resources, and supports safe routes to school programs and general consulting work. The learning objectives for today are: 1, to explain the Safe Routes to School program framework; 2, to identify the benefits of safe routes to school programs; 3, to identify partnership opportunities between safe routes practitioners and health professionals; and 4, identify successful safe routes to school program examples in California. Following Corey's presentation, we will allow time for discussion and Q&A. Welcome, Corey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. This is a nice new audience that I'm speaking to. I'm used to speaking to people who are embedded in the Safe Routes world. So I'm always excited to, connect with new people and share all of the great work that's happening in Safe Routes to School. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and hopefully you all can see this. Okay, I assume everybody can see it. All right, so I am here to basically talk about how you can partner with Safe Routes to School programs and practitioners. And actually, I didn't include this in one of my slides, but I'm actually curious if you could just like give a thumbs up in the chat if you're familiar with Safe Routes to School at all, if you've heard of it before, participated in a Safe Routes to School activity. If not, that is totally fine. I'm going to explain what Safe Routes to School is, just to get a sense of who is in our virtual space today. And I see one who, a little familiarity with Safe Routes to School. Two. All right. So that's awesome. If you're new to Safe Routes, welcome. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll learn a bit more about this great movement and why you should become a part of it. So just a little bit about the organization that I work for. I am the program and engagement manager for Safe Routes Partnership. And so we are a national organization that works to support and advance safe walking, biking, rolling, scooting to schools, but also to everyday destinations, whether that's a grocery store or a park or a library. And so a lot of my work is actually supporting local Safe Routes to School programs. So I don't directly implement anything, but I help support the people who do this work on the ground. So that's a little bit about about the organization that I work for and my role. I am based in Baltimore, Maryland. So we're actually a completely remote organization. So I'm here, but I get to work with people from all across the country, which is really exciting. I also used to live in San Francisco for a few years. That's my California connection. I lived in the Presidio and worked for City of Walnut Creek out in Contra Costa County. So I do know a bit about California and have some other California connections, but I am based on the East Coast for now. So I actually want to start off with a quick poll. And Nancy, I don't know if I can launch it. Okay, perfect. So I'd love to know what your favorite way is to travel around your community. So do you like walking, biking? Are you a transit user? Rolling, that can include like a wheelchair or a rollator, scooter. So if we could launch that poll and just get a sense of how people like to travel in their communities, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and submit my answer too. And Nancy, whenever you think we have a critical mass, can stop the poll and share our results. I put walking. I love walking. I walk everywhere. And I use transit too. So that's my primary mode of traveling around my community. Okay, awesome. So we have some people who like to walk too, a few people who are into biking, lots of driving or being driven. Okay, great. And then our second poll question is, how did you get to school growing up? If we could launch that poll. So I was actually a combination. I was a walker and was driven, but I'll say driven most of the time. I'll give that a few seconds. And Nancy, whenever you want to share our results. Okay, again, a nice mix. Some walking, a little bit of biking, riding the school bus. I was always so jealous of kids who got to ride the school bus. I thought that just seemed like the most fun thing in the world, although the kids in the bus hated it, but I really wanted to be a school bus rider. Transit and being driven. Okay, awesome. So basically, I'm asking this because Safe Routes to School is actually about students walking, biking, and rolling to school. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the program, give some context for what Safe Routes to School is, talk about some of the activities and opportunities for you all to get involved in programs happening in California. So basically, if you're not familiar with Safe Routes to School, it is a movement and a program to make school travel. So that can include everything from walking, biking, using a wheelchair, riding an electric scooter. Those are very popular now. So making all of those active modes of travel safe, convenient, and fun for children of all genders, races, ages, abilities, and disabilities. And Safe Routes to School programs have been in existence since 2000. 2005 when we first, kind of started this movement, and is like only growing and has grown from there. I can't tell you how many Safe Routes to School programs there are across the country because there are, hundreds at this point, but it's definitely a movement that is growing and that is happening in teeny tiny towns all the way to our nation's biggest cities. So this movement kind of started because we know that, back in the, 40s, 50s, 60s, back in the day, as we say, nearly half of all children either walked to school or biked to school. It was more of the, more of the norm. Whereas today, just 13% of students are walking and biking. So there's been a drastic decrease in students who are walking and biking to school. And that's for a number of reasons, whether it's just, increase in car culture or car infrastructure, students going to school outside of their neighborhood schools, just people wanting to drive more in general and not do as much walking and biking as they used to. So there are lots of reasons for why this shift has happened. And Safe Routes to School really tries to, kind of reverse that trend and get more students walking and biking and rolling to school. So we know that now family car trips make up about 10 to 14% of morning congestion. And I know that in my, neighborhood, I've seen those long car loops where it's just, it looks like hundreds of cars just sitting trying to either drop students off to school or pick students up from school. So that morning congestion is really becoming an issue. And we also know that injuries and fatalities are especially high in low-income neighborhoods. And again, that happens for a number of reasons. Lower-income neighborhoods often have, less or adequate walking and rolling infrastructure. So not a lot of sidewalks or bike lanes, or their communities that are, the school is right next to a major highway. So all of those things contribute to some of those injuries and fatalities that we see with students in low-income neighborhoods, especially. The good news is that it's not all dire, that Safe Routes to School actually works. This is an evidence-based program. It's a CDC best practice for increasing physical activity rates for young people. And so we know that Safe Routes to School programs can lead to a 35 to 45% increase in walking and biking to school. And it can also lead to a decrease in pedestrian injuries near a school. And we also just know that kids who walk and bike more and roll more are more physically active, which is, definitely great for their, physical health and mental health. So, while the trend is kind of trending in the wrong direction, we do know that Safe Routes to School is a program and a movement that's actually working to help kids be more physically active. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of Safe Routes to School before I kind of get into like what this looks like, in practice. So while this program is really focused on, child mobility and child safety, we find the benefits extend to the entire community. So, whether it's increasing community connectedness, so young people who can kind of have those social connections while they're walking to school with their friends or their peers or saying hi to neighbors, that's something that is a really great part of Safe Routes to School, and something that we're really focusing on a lot more these days when it comes to students' mental health, or just, wanting students to feel connected to the community where they live. Climate benefits, that's something I'll talk about a little bit later. It's definitely an area of interest across California when it comes to Safe Routes to School programs. So not having as many cars on the road can help, reduce some of the greenhouse gas emissions. We talk a lot about, student asthma rates and using Safe Routes to School as a way to address some of the climate concerns that we're seeing in communities across the country. So that's a benefit. Just healthier students overall. So, having students being more physically active, which lead to a reduced risk in chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, that's another benefit. And then better academic performance too. So being able to, come to school ready to learn, clear mind, and also having students have fewer absences or tardies because they're walking or biking to school. So, kids look forward to walking to school with their friends and want to, participate in that and be on time. Just a few other benefits as well. Safety from crime. We've also seen that there are students who, like when they're walking together, walking with adults, that can lead to less harassment or bullying, and just increased physical safety. The traffic safety piece, obviously, part of Safe Routes to School is really getting the infrastructure improvements in place to make it safer for kids to walk and bike to school. So we see that reduction in injuries and fatalities and just dangerous situations for students who are traveling to school. And there's also that cost saving piece, which a lot of safe routes to school practitioners like to, that's how they can make the case for safe routes to school to their local government agency. You don't necessarily have to, operate a huge bus fleet and pay all that money for buses if students can walk or bike to school. And again, that reduced traffic congestion at drop off and pickup times. So lots of opportunities for safe routes to school to benefit a community. And again, not just for students, but also for, neighbors, school staff, other families, other community members. This is a program that can really help everybody. Just a little bit about how safe routes to school programs are organized. So a lot of them are actually happening at the local level. So a safe routes to school program can be organized and run out of just a single school can have a program. It could be a county program or a city or a school district or a community organization. So it kind of like looks different in every community. The thing I love about safe routes to school is that it's not a one size fits all approach. It's really whatever works best in the context of your community. And then at the state level, there are also statewide safe routes to school programs that are usually operated out of a transportation department. So they kind of help support the local programs. That's a bit about how the programs are structured. And the Safe Routes to School coordinator is kind of like the heart of the program in some ways, besides the students being the heart of the program. So the coordinator is the person who really manages the program. So they oversee all of the activities. They might lead the Safe Routes to School task force or committee. So that group of people who really determine what this program actually looks like. They coordinate between the different program partners, recruit and train volunteers. They, also work to really expand their program. So, having it, not just exist within one school campus, but having it be a citywide or countywide effort. And they also help seek funding opportunities. So we talk about funding a lot in Safe Routes to School, like, oh, this sounds great, but how do you fund more sidewalks or how do you fund, more bikes for kids? So funding is a part of Safe Routes to School as well. And they also evaluate what's working and what's not working. So we want to make sure that if we're, putting all these interventions in place, they're actually, being effective and increasing the rate of students who are walking and biking to school. And just a little bit about the overall program framework. So Safe Routes to School is kind of operates using the 6 E's framework, which are engagement, equity, encouragement, engineering, education, and evaluation. So when we think about Safe Routes to School, we really think about programs that incorporate each one of these elements into their program. And while there are some programs that focus more on one element over another, we really find that a comprehensive approach works best. So there are some programs where they like to focus a lot on the engineering piece. They're like, we need sidewalks, we need bus lanes, we need stop signs. We want to make sure the infrastructure is there so students can actually walk and bike to school. That's great. We have other programs that focus on the education piece. So teaching kids how to cross a street safely or how to ride a bike safely in a street. That might be their focus area. That's totally fine. We just recommend that all programs have that comprehensive approach. So bring in little, bits and pieces of each one of the 6 E's into your program. That's what we find to be the most effective way to do this. So the first E is engagement, which is basically just, listening to students and families and figuring out what it is that they need. So if there are students and families who aren't walking or biking for whatever reason, we encourage Safe Routes practitioners to ask them and figure out what is it? What are those barriers to walking and biking? How can we address those barriers through a Safe Routes to School program, whether it's an infrastructure solution or whether it's some sort of education solution? Do kids not know how to ride a bike or how to cross a street? That can all be a part of the engagement piece of Safe Routes to School. Next is equity. So we know that not all communities have access to the same resources, and that there are some communities that face way larger barriers to walking and biking. So when you think about Safe Routes to School, we also like to prioritize those communities where there are those systemic barriers to walking and biking, which can include infrastructure, just overall neighborhood design and planning. And so we really encourage Safe Routes practitioners to prioritize those communities where there are the most barriers to walking and biking, and working with community members to find solutions to make walking and biking more accessible and equitable. Next is engineering, like I mentioned. So, making sure that you have those infrastructure pieces in place so that walking and biking can be safe and easy. We talk to some parents who say, I'm not letting my kid walk to school because there is no sidewalk. And it's kind of hard to, like counter that argument. It's like, yes, sometimes walking walking outside of a sidewalk is not a safe activity. So I get why you're hesitant to have your child walk and bike to school. And those engineering elements can really help bring those street design improvements that make walking and biking accessible and safer and more comfortable. We also have the encouragement piece. So there are some students who just need a little bit of, encouragement to walk or bike to school. So there are activities that Safe Routes practitioners implement to really encourage walking and biking. So they might have, walk to school contest, and the class that has the most students walk to school, get a prize. Or yesterday was Walk and Roll to School Day, which is a national celebration of walking to school. And so that's a way to kind of incentivize students walking and biking to school. So encouragement activities are really fun. I'll talk about those a little bit later too. There's the education piece, like I mentioned, making sure that students are, equipped and have the skills and knowledge to safely walk, bike, and roll to school. So that can include everything from learning how to ride a bike, to learning how to cross a crosswalk, to even learning how to ride transit. We know there are some students who take transit to school. So, how do you get safely from your house to the bus stop? When you get to the bus, what do you do? How do you actually, enter the bus and, put in your fare card? And that whole process can really help students get more comfortable with walking or biking, even part of the way to school in that case. And then again, the evaluation piece. Is this actually working? So if we do a bike skills course where kids are learning how to ride a bike, how to put on a helmet safely, how to, signal when you're out on the road, do those educational experiences actually help? Do those encouragement activities actually help and increase rates of students who are walking, biking, and rolling to school? Those infrastructure projects, did the sidewalk that was created, did that lead to more students walking or biking to school? So we want to make sure that, we're not just like doing all these activities for fun, but that it's very intentional, and that it's yielding the outcomes that we're, really looking to have when we're doing these interventions. So that's a little bit about the framework of Safe Routes to School. And the next thing I'll talk about is, kind of how Safe Routes to School programs are organized. So I mentioned before that there are some programs that are really heavy on the infrastructure side. So getting those sidewalk construction projects, bike lanes, speed reduction around school zones, getting all of that in place so that students can walk and bike to school more safely. There's also the non-infrastructure side, which are kind of like the fun, activities and events and assemblies and things that do not involve any sort of infrastructure improvement. And we find that there are communities that focus on both. And it's for a few reasons. With the infrastructure projects, infrastructure can just take a long time and is very expensive. So like you wouldn't think it would take that long to build a sidewalk, but it can be a years-long process and applying for funding. And while that infrastructure is needed and is great, that doesn't necessarily hinder you having a Safe Routes to School program. There are some programs that are just really focused on the non-infrastructure piece, and the infrastructure comes down the line, or it's not a primary area of focus. So again, it just depends on the community that you're working with, but we found that communities have been very successful in implementing programs that are a balance of both, or heavier on one side or another. I think for today's purposes, we'll probably talk about non-infrastructure activities more, just because, like I said, the infrastructure piece takes a long time and engineering and planning is not in my wheelhouse. So I'll focus on the non-infrastructure piece of Safe Routes to School for this conversation. So I'm going to share a few of like the typical Safe Routes to School activities. And as I'm sharing this, you can start thinking about some ways that you could possibly get involved in a Safe Routes to School activity in your community, because there can be lots of fun options for you. So Safe Routes to School encouragement and education activities can vary. So I just put a short list here, but honestly, we found that communities kind of, create their own Safe Routes to School programs and activities and kind of give it that local flair. But just a few that are kind of like standard things that a lot of Safe Routes to School programs do. I mentioned yesterday was Walk and Roll to School Day. So again, that's kind of like a national celebration of walking to school. I was out in elementary school right outside of DC, a little neighborhood school, and all the kids were walking to school and they were, getting little, fun giveaways and a healthy breakfast. And there were some local volunteers who were out. The PTA was out. There's some Safe Routes to School programs where there's like a Safe Routes to School mascot. There's like a zebra mascot that we have here in one of the programs in Maryland. So like the Safe Routes to School Zeal the zebra will come out and, talk about safety tips with the kids. And it's kind of like a fun community celebration. So I'd say if you're like looking to kind of dip your toes into Safe Routes to School, looking for a local Walk and Roll to School Day celebration would probably be one of the easiest entry points for this. And it's also a lot of fun. Like kids get super into it. It is very exciting. Sometimes I've seen programs that have had, marching bands and the step team and cheerleading performances, and it's all in celebration of walking to school. And then a similar program or a similar celebration takes place in May for Bike and Roll to School Day. So same thing, just celebrating biking to school. So I'd say that that's kind of like, one of the premier Safe Routes to School activities. There are also walking school bus programs. I'll talk about that in a moment, and bike train programs, which are basically just organized opportunities for students to walk to school or bike to school together. Bike rodeos, teaching kids how to actually ride a bike on some sort of safe and organized course. Walk audits, which I'll talk about in a second too, and also remote drop off and pickup programs. So that there are some students who, for whatever reason, cannot walk to school. It could be that they live far away, or that walking or biking to school just is not a safe option. We talk about this a lot with our rural communities where schools are just kind of more spread out and there isn't that infrastructure for students to walk and bike to school. So in that case, they can maybe get dropped off, a block or two away from the school building and then walk the rest of the way to school. So there's still that opportunity to get some physical activity in there, even if you're not walking the whole route to school. So lots of options here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the walk and roll audit. So this is basically an opportunity for people to go out and do a road safety assessment and kind of see, what it's like on the ground if you're trying to walk or bike or roll to school. So it's usually a group of people. There's probably a Safe Routes to School coordinator who's there, and a local planner or engineer, and then community volunteers. So again, if you're thinking about opportunities to get involved in Safe Routes to School, this could be one if there's a walk audit happening in your community. And so the group goes out, they have a little clipboard and a little checklist of different things they're looking for. So, does this route have a sidewalk? Does it have a crosswalk? Does it have a stop sign? Does it have a speed limit? All those things that make walking and rolling safer and easier. And they go and they do a road safety assessment and see what's working and what's not working. And usually the planners or engineers will take that information and go and figure out some of their solutions, and the Safe Routes practitioners will figure out what some of their safety solutions can be. So it's just a way, again, to make sure that any sort of activity or intervention that's put in place is meaningful and that's appropriate for the community, right? Because there might be an intervention that what works in one community but doesn't work in another community. If you don't need a sidewalk, you might need something else. Maybe you need a bike lane, or maybe you need a stop sign or a painted crosswalk. So we kind of try to avoid like the one size fits all approach here. So that's the walk and roll audits, which is kind of like a road safety assessment, checking out to see what's going on and assess the situation and then determine some next steps. We also have people who go out and observe arrivals and dismissals, which can be a pretty chaotic time if anybody's been in any sort of like school drop off or pickup situation. long car lines, kids kind of everywhere, lots going on. So Safe Routes coordinators will go out and just observe what that time looks like and see if they can kind of find some solutions to, maybe it's operationalizing your drop off and pick up, or just finding some safer solutions to, to coordinating what can be a pretty chaotic time of the school day. So again, another opportunity if you wanted to volunteer, get involved in that. I'm sure Safe Routes school coordinators always love to get people who volunteer their time for observing arrival and dismissal. And similar to a walk audit, it's the same thing. You kind of assess the situation, see what's going on, and determine some solutions to hopefully improve safety during that time. I just mentioned Walk and Roll to School Day. That's observed every October, by the way, so you just missed it by a day. There are also some communities that do ongoing Walk and Roll to School Day celebrations. Walking Wednesdays has become very popular. Same thing with Wellness Wednesdays. So there are some communities where they actually just keep this going all year. And so another opportunity to kind of get involved in a walking event could be jumping on a Walking Wednesday celebration in your community. And I mentioned Bike and Roll to School Day, that's observed every May. So same thing as Walk to School Day, just with biking. And again, there are some communities that do this throughout the year. So it just depends on what's happening in your, in your local area. Some communities also have walking school bus programs. And so this is exactly what it sounds like. So instead of having students who, meet at the bus stop and then get on a bus and the bus stops at the different places and you arrive at school, they do that same process, but it's just through walking. So it's basically a group walk along a designated route, and the route is determined usually by a Safe Routes to School coordinator, or it could be determined by, a parent or a trusted adult or a teacher, but there is some sort of structured route, and it's led by adults. So there might be, walking school bus leader, and their day to lead the walking school bus is Friday. And so they'll start at their house and pick up the kids along the way, along the route, and then, eventually arrive at the school. And this is a nice way to promote walking. Biking, it can be done with bikes too. Bike train is also kind of picking up momentum. So same thing, just kids riding bikes to school instead. But this is a way for students to have that organized structure of walking to school. They can do it with an adult, so they kind of, feel a bit safer. I think that older kids can kind of like transition to doing it independently, but they might start out on like a walking school bus, and then, once they hit upper elementary school, middle school, they do it on their own. But it also helps take the individual burden off of a parent, who either has to walk their kid to school every single day. Maybe they just volunteer one day a week to lead the walking school bus. So it can kind of make that school travel a bit easier on parents and caregivers. It can also reduce tardiness. Again, there are kids who look forward to this every week. I saw a bike bus last week in Arlington, Virginia that had 30 kids on it. And it was 30 kids who were, they had their bikes, they were ready to go. They look forward to it every Friday. They're like, today's bike bus day. I have to be there. I can't be late. So, that really gets them excited about not only traveling to school, but getting to school on time. So that tardiness reduction is a piece of this programming, and then can also incorporate safety education. So as you're walking or as you're biking, you're reinforcing those safety skills. You're looking both ways, you're making sure that your helmet's on, you're making sure that you're signaling when you're turning on your bike. All of those skills are reinforced through these types of programs. So that's walking school bus / bike train, and then bike rodeos as well. So bike rodeos are just opportunities for students to learn how to ride a bike or learn basic bike skills. These are actually little pre-K kids who are on a bike skills course in DC. And so they're, learning to ride, and they're, maybe 3 or 4. So never too early to start with the bike skills. But that's something else that, that's another activity that's incorporated into a Safe Routes to School program. And then just a little bit about Safe Routes to School in California, which I'm sure you're most curious about. So we actually have on our organization's website, we have a Safe Routes to School census. Again, I'll say this is not a comprehensive list. This is just who decided to self-report they have a Safe Routes to School program. But you can basically go on our interactive map and click on one of the circles, and it'll show you where the different Safe Routes to School programs are, in your state. California is a big state, so there are lots of Safe Routes to School programs that are happening. I'd say one of the oldest Safe Routes Routes to School programs in general in the country is Marin County's program. They've been around for a very long time, but there are literally programs that are happening all across the country. Like I mentioned, from small communities to some of our nation's biggest cities. So I definitely say check out our Safe Routes to School census if you want to see what's happening in your local community. Just to give you a few other opportunities to, find a program where you're working or where you're living. So some Safe Routes to School programs are run out of the local health department, like Imperial County, Riverside. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get started? Like, where do I find Safe Routes people? It might be your local health department. It also could be your local transportation or public works department. That's also a place where a Safe Routes to School program might be housed. It can also be a school district, or sometimes it's also, a hospital. We have a lot of hospital partners who are involved in Safe Routes to School programs, like in San Diego, local children's hospital. They, I think somebody from there chairs their Safe Routes to School coalition, like their Safe Routes to School committee. So local hospital might be an opportunity to kind of find some Safe Routes people. Even like a bike shop or a bike advocacy organization, a lot of their members are either involved in Safe Routes to School programs in some way or actually manage the Safe Routes to School program, like in Sonoma County. I think that their local bicycle coalition, they actually run their Safe Routes to School program. So we're kind of like looking for how to, what the in is, who to connect with. Those might be some places where you could look. And of course, you can also just ask us at the partnership. We work with communities, like I said, from all across the country and do a lot of work in California. So if you're just like really not sure where to get started, you can always just reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction. And just a few Safe Routes to School highlights from California. So this is the Walk to School Day celebration from Orange County Safe Routes to School. This is from a few years ago. I'm sure they had a great celebration yesterday as well. But again, this is something that communities all across the country are doing. So these are students in Orange County who are heading out to school on Walk and Roll to School Day from, I don't remember what year this was, but it was a few years ago. Another really special California highlight is Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. So this, I guess this movement kind of started in collaboration with AAA and San Mateo County Safe Routes to School program, which is run out of their education department. And, this is really an opportunity to not only talk about safe walking and biking and rolling and physical activity, but to also start a dialogue and commemorate, Ruby Bridges and what she did. She faced a lot of barriers walking to school that did not necessarily have to do with infrastructure, right? And so the Ruby Bridges Foundation has started this Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day as a day of national dialogue about not only walking to school, but also racism and activism and how to make a difference in your community. And so San Mateo County, they were actually really involved in getting the state legislature to officially recognize November 14th as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day across the state of California. So again, another opportunity for you all in the next month or so. November 14th, Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. There might be some celebrations in your community, and that's another great way to get involved and support Safe Routes to School. Alameda County also has a really great program, especially for high school students. We often talk about elementary schools as a part of this program, but high school students are also doing great work, especially on the climate piece. So Alameda County, they have over a decade of high school programming, and their emphasis is really on, transportation independence. So being able to, travel around your community on your own, including using transit, and that climate justice piece as well. So how can we use walking and biking, to reduce some of the environmental barriers to walking and biking to school. So whether that's lowering environmental barriers that are making it harder to walk and bike to school and that are actually contributing to climate change. So, those students are really involved in promoting walking and biking to school, car-free campuses, using transit. There's a youth task force all about climate change solutions to school travel. It's another really great program happening in the Bay Area. And then again, just a few ways that you might want to get involved. Connect with your local Safe Routes to School coordinator. And again, if you're not sure who that is or how to do that, we'd be happy to connect you with a program in your area. volunteering at a Safe Routes to School event, whether it's a walk and roll to school day celebration or, attending a walk and roll audit, and doing a road safety assessment. I'm sure that people would love to hear from health professionals as far as your perspective on safe walking and biking and rolling, even just sharing health and wellness tips with a local Safe Routes to School coordinator or the students and kids and families who you're working with, just talking about the importance of physical activity, opportunities to be physically active while you're walking and biking to school. All of those are ways you can get involved in Safe Routes to School programs. And honestly, if you have like other ways you want to get involved, that's fine too. This is just some brief suggestions, but the great thing about this program is that it can really be what you want it to be. So, you can think about ways that you might want to get involved in Safe Routes to School. So it's just a very brief overview of what Safe Routes to School is, how you can get involved. I could talk about this for a long, long time, but I know that we have some time for Q&A as well, and I have some questions that are going to be coming my way. So I will stop here and move on to Q&A. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. But yeah, that's my overview of Safe Routes to School.
Wonderful. Thank you, Corey. We will now start the Q&A session of the webinar. We have time for a couple of questions. If there are questions we are unable to address, we will follow up with you offline. We do have a few questions that have already come in, and so let me go ahead and pull those up. All right, so the first question is, how do we leverage our role as champion providers / clinicians for work in this space?
Yeah, so I think the great thing about Safe Routes to School is that it really can be something that anybody can get involved in. And when I talk to Safe Routes practitioners, I find that anybody who is willing to support is welcome to be a part of the, of the program. I will say that as healthcare providers and as people who, definitely care about, child mobility, child safety, child health, that I think that you can be a really respected voice within the Safe Routes community and a really trusted voice within the Safe Routes community. So I would say that, you can, kind of like leverage your, your position to do everything from just talking to students and families about safe walking and biking to, advocating for walking and biking infrastructure in your community. So I think there are lots of ways to get involved. And it's also really about finding the way that you want to be involved. Like if you're somebody who loves to bike, maybe your way of being involved is going and attending a bike and roll to school day event and, having that be your way to support Safe Routes to School. If you're somebody who really likes to, advocate for change, maybe you're someone who's advocating alongside students and families for, more biking and rolling and walking infrastructure, or for having more physical activity during the school day. That's another big part of Safe Routes to School. So kind of teaming up with, with PE teachers. So I really think that it's about, finding the way that you can, authentically engage in Safe Routes to School and not have it be something that's like, totally separate from your work, but something that's really, connected to what you're already doing and what you're already passionate about.
Wonderful. So the next question is, what do people do regarding liability or accidents that happen?
Yes, I actually did a presentation on this a few weeks ago for Oregon Safe Routes to School, and they were wanting to know about liability. That comes up a lot. And what we've actually found is that, in the almost 20 years we've been doing this work, we have not seen any sort of lawsuit or community being sued because of a Safe Routes to School program. We have some school districts that are very concerned about liability, that are very, risk averse. And so this comes up a lot, especially when it comes to like bike programs or electric scooters or electric bikes. And so, like really when we talk about Safe Routes to School, we really talk about, like the benefits that it can bring to a community. We always stress that, again, we haven't seen any sort of lawsuits or, communities getting in trouble or being sued because of Safe Routes to School programs. And that when we think about liability, it's really about acting with reasonable care and not being negligent. And so for our Safe Routes practitioners, if they're out leading a bike skills course or leading a walking school bus program. We really try to make sure that everybody is acting with reasonable care, which, for the most part they do. Like nobody's instructing kids to go, run out in front of traffic. And we just find that a lot of the concerns about liability tend to be overblown or exaggerated in comparison to like the situations that actually, come up. Obviously, you're working with kids. Somebody might fall and scrape their knee as they're walking to school. Somebody might, topple off of a bike. But we haven't really found that many liability, like real life liability issues when it comes to safe routes to school. And again, this is us, from our national perspective, having doing this for a few decades now, that it just hasn't been a big issue,
Okay.
which is good. So yeah.
All right. So I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you discuss the equity aspect of safe routes to school initiatives in California and how they address disparities in access to safe transportation options for students from underserved communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say that California has a bunch of things that are going on when it comes to equity. One of the big ones is the Active Transportation Program, which is California's like large infrastructure grant funding program. So this is basically a statewide competition that happens every 2 years, I believe, that communities can compete for to get these kind of like large scale infrastructure grants. It is a very complicated process and a very competitive process. And we actually have a person on our staff who's like, his whole role is supporting communities and applying for this grant funding. Like it's called ATP for short. His focus is on ATP and getting ATP to the communities that need it the most. So within that program, one of the scoring considerations is for not my term. They say, does this project support an infrastructure improvement in a disadvantaged community? And when they say disadvantaged community, I think that they'll look at the Callan virus screen, and there are a few other ways to kind of measure if a community is disadvantaged or not. And so that's one way to ensure that communities that, are facing those barriers to safe infrastructure are getting the resources that they need. Of course, again, because it's a highly competitive and complex process, that often those communities face barriers to just applying for that funding in the first place. But that's why, organizations like ours come in and help those communities apply. So it's kind of like on the infrastructure end, supporting communities that, just need that safe walking and biking infrastructure. I'll also say that on the climate end, there are a lot of communities that are doing some really great work on the local level. One of our favorite safe route success stories is from Muscoy, California, in San Bernardino County. So this is a community that has, a lot of climate and environmental concerns when it comes to, air quality or living close to industrial areas, high asthma rates, paired with inadequate infrastructure. So not a lot of sidewalks, not a lot of safe walking and biking infrastructure. And so this is an example of, a local community actually stepping up and saying, we want to, get sidewalks in our community. Their whole advocacy campaign, for the most part, was about getting more sidewalks, bringing sidewalks to Muscoy. So they kind of formed this coalition of students, parents, caregivers, other family members, school staff, local elected officials, community advocates, and partners to kind of team up and not only raise awareness about the climate concerns in Muscoy and the transportation concerns, and also made the case for why they need to get some infrastructure funding to address some of these concerns. So they ended up, creating a whole advocacy campaign for this, including a demonstration project where they kind of like created temporary sidewalks along a school route to show like, if we had sidewalks, we could actually walk to school and wouldn't have to drive to school as much and could lower some of the, car emissions. And so they led this effort for maybe, I don't know, at least a year, maybe 2 years, and actually ended up getting one of those ATP grants to get sidewalks in the school community and started a Safe Routes to School program. So the Sidewalks for Muscoy project is kind of like one of our premier examples of, a community where there were serious, systemic barriers to walking and biking, and a great example of a community coming together and advocating for change and were able to secure the funding they really needed to get those sidewalks built. So again, it's not like a complete solution, like now everything is great, but it does address some of those climate concerns and transportation safety concerns. And we found that in other communities across California too that are facing similar, climate concerns when it comes to, walking and biking and neighborhood design.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
I haven't seen any more come in.
Okay, so if not, I'll ask another question.
Yeah.
So what are the unique challenges and opportunities that California communities face when implementing safe routes to school, considering the diverse geography and population?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll say, again, challenges, I'd say the infrastructure barriers, I think that that's something that's we kind of see, across the country, and it's definitely something that's played out in California. And then, like the climate challenges as well. We've seen a lot of communities that have been, focused more on, air quality and asthma rates and incorporating that into their safe routes to school program. And it's interesting because it kind of used to be like more of a California thing a few years ago, and it's kind of like creeped into other parts of the country now that are experiencing effects of, wildfires and climate change in a way that we haven't experienced before. So I'd say that those are some of the, the challenges when it comes to safe routes to school in California. And again, just like not every community having the same access to resources. But I'd also say that those are also some of the greatest opportunities for safe routes to school, especially on the climate end. I think that especially with some of the work that high school students are doing to address climate change through safe routes to school, is really innovative and exciting. And as with many things that happen in this country, I think there are other communities kind of looking to what's happening in California for guidance or ideas on, what to do next, or how to address some of the concerns that they're seeing in their own communities. I'd also say that, exploring the role of transit has been something else we've seen in California. So whether it's the Alameda County students who've been incorporating transit into their Safe Routes to School program, like not only do you learn how to walk and bike to school, but how do you use the city bus? How do you use the BART train? How do you use micromobility, some of the e-bikes and electric scooters? We've seen that coming out of California as well. So bringing in the walking and rolling piece, but also the transit piece. So those are a few things that we've kind of been keeping our eye on when it comes to safe routes to school in California, and finding ways to be more equitable.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Are there specific policies or initiatives within California that have been particularly effective in promoting safe routes to schools, and how can our healthcare providers get involved in advocating for such policies?
Yeah, so I'd say that the ATP program, the infrastructure program, that's been a big one. Just being able to get that infrastructure in place, that's really helped a lot of communities kind of ramp up their safe routes to school programs, knowing that they have the safe infrastructure to do it. Now they can actually now students and families actually feel safer walking and biking to school because there are the sidewalks or bike lanes or painted crosswalks. So that's something that's pretty unique to California, and just knowing that there's this, such a large investment in walking and biking infrastructure has been really exciting. I'd also say that like bike education initiatives have been really innovative in California as well. So we have a lot of safe routes to school programs that really focus a lot on biking, building up bike skills, how to wear your helmet, getting more bike education in schools. That's been really exciting to see in a lot of our programs in California. Even things like making sure that your school has a bike rack. There are some kids who are like, I don't bike to school because my bike is going to get stolen. I'm like, yeah, I get that. Like if your bike gets stolen, you're going to go home and your mom's going to be like, where's your bike? So it can even be like little things like that that can make such a huge difference. And I'd say that the last thing that I think people can do is also just get involved locally in your community. If you see that there's an opportunity to provide feedback on an upcoming infrastructure project or neighborhood redesign project, sometimes the local planning department or transportation department will put out a call for comments. Like, we're going to do a neighborhood redesign of our main street. Let us know what you think. Or we're going to put bike lanes on our main street. Let us know what you think. They like to hear your feedback. And so if you're somebody who's, supporting walking and biking and can be an advocate not only for yourself and your own family, but for other kids in the community, I think that could be a great way to kind of, get involved and provide some feedback and show that wide, that community-wide support for some of these initiatives. Because if that money doesn't get spent, there's not kind of like this widespread show of support for some of these programs. It can sometimes get that funding can sometimes get transitioned over to other projects like highway expansion projects or projects that don't support walking and biking. So we really want to show like the community wants this and needs this, and this is important. And so any opportunity to like provide feedback, even on like a very local level, like to your town hall or city manager, county executive, that's another great way to kind of advocate for safe routes to school as a healthcare provider. And then of course, talking to your, families and, kids about the importance of walking and biking and movement in general, I think is another great way to make a difference.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to that, have you seen specifically healthcare providers participate in these type of initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So, here in what I was living in DC at the time, but we partnered with GW Children's Hospital on a lot of safe routes to school and safe kids initiatives. And so, for our walk to school day events or other events that would be happening in the city, we would have physicians who would come and either volunteer or talk on safe routes to school and transportation panels about, the importance of physical activity and safe walking and biking. So we've seen a lot on like the, I'd say with like healthcare providers who are working in hospitals and who are kind of like connected to Safe Kids coalitions. We've seen a lot of those partnerships that have happened. And here in DC, that's been a pretty effective way of kind of getting some more buy-in when it comes to safe routes to school, and also some of the expertise that we as safe routes practitioners necessarily have. So in safe routes to school, a lot of us are planners or engineers or education people, and I think that healthcare providers and physicians can really bring the medical perspective to safe routes to school that is sometimes missing. So I'd say we love to hear from you all. We'd love to hear your perspective and learn from your expertise and your knowledge, and love your support. So any way that you would want to contribute or support a safe routes to school program, I'm sure would be totally welcome to any safe routes to school coordinator.
Excellent. Okay, and just the last question, is there, you provided a lot of information. Is there any additional advice you'd like to give our healthcare providers who are looking to become champions for the Safe Routes to School program in their communities?
Yeah, I would say just find a way that you want to get involved. Like, and it can be something small. It can, it can be going out and, celebrating a walk and roll to school day event, or, just like looking up and seeing if there is a safe routes to school program in your community. So there's not like a one size fits all approach. It's kind of figuring out, what makes sense for you and how you want to support safe routes to school. And again, even if it's something that's just like talking to the kids you work with about the importance of walking and biking and rolling and being physically active, like those things make a difference. And I think that our safe routes to school champions, I will say that a lot of them, I think that with schools kind of being so busy these days and being at capacity these days, that people are looking for new partnerships and new people to support this program. So we've been talking a lot about like partnering with libraries or parks partners, or just kind of being innovative in the way that we're working together. And so I know that people would be thrilled to know that there's another partner who wants to come out and support in any way, even if it's just, handing out a flyer about walk and roll to school day. Like that would be totally, welcome within our Safe Routes community. So, start small if you need to, but your support is definitely welcomed and encouraged.
Thank you. Thank you so much again, Corey. That was really fantastic presentation, and
Thanks.
wonderful to receive some concrete practical next steps for our fellows in terms of how they can get involved and lend their expertise to this movement. So thank you once again for taking the time to share with us. Thanks, Lena, for moderating. We will be, as a reminder, we will be posting the slides and the recording next week, and they should be up by next Thursday. So please look out for that. With that, thank you again to everyone who is attended, and really appreciate your support. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.